We're gonna get started. Thanks everybody for being here. I still see a few people coming in, but like that's fine. It's on them for being late and missing the beginning. They can catch the recording. Let's start with that. Thanks for being here at Strengthening Your Browser Security for the Modern Workspace with DefensX, presented to you by Sherweb, obviously. I'm Guillaume Boisvert. I'm the Director of Product Innovation at Sherweb. You've also seen me from many of these launch webinars the last year, and we're happy to see you guys again. I'm joined by quite the team from DefensX, specifically Andrew Morton, Vice President of Sales, and Justin Passero, who's their sales engineer, is going to do a live demonstration for us just a little bit later. Andrew, thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having us.
So, a couple of just housekeeping items. This is recorded. You will be getting a link to the recording and to the presentation in the next, let's say, within 48 hours. Just look to your inbox. If you have to leave today during the presentation, don't worry, you'll be getting access to the full presentation. It'll also be on our YouTube channel. If you want to see the other similar webinars around the new products that we've launched this year, you can consult our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Sherweb, where all of our videos are, a lot of thought leadership, a lot of product presentations, such as this one. Today, we have a very exciting subject that we're talking about, and that's browser security. Okay, let me touch on the agenda very quickly. So we'll talk about, we'll start from the basic. Why are we talking about browser security is going to be the first thing. Then we'll learn more about DefensX itself, including a practical demo. Then we'll talk about specifically how you can acquire DefensX at Sherweb, how to get started, and what kind of useful resources we have. Let's get right into it. I guess the first point is really a question for you, Andrew, is the people that are on the presentation today here are all MSP. They're all familiar with endpoint security. They all have a endpoint protection product, most likely. Today, we're talking to them about browser security. Why are we talking about browser security specifically? Isn't that covered by endpoint security? Like, why the specific focus here? Like, isn't that sort of reducing the scope of what we're usually looking at? Like, and why do we need to focus on browser security?
Okay, well, that's a terrific question, Guillaume. Thank you very much. Browser security very much has become a newer topic, but then also we've seen a drastic increase in attacks the last, we'll call it 3-4 years. We've always seen attacks and things happening, but things have really increased, especially the last 3-4 years, where we're seeing something like 100% year-over-year increase. And really why browser security matters and why we're doing this and why DefensX specifically is growing so quickly among MSPs across North America and frankly globally, is we're seeing a huge rise in browser-based attacks, which means that most attacks now originate from the web. The old days of endpoint security, things made sense when it came to antivirus, and then of course we saw next generation antivirus. And very specifically, we've seen a couple of reasons why. Part of it has been the shift in the way we compute. It's also been a shift in the way the workforce is just function. If you look at the last 4 years, in case anybody didn't notice, in 2020, a lot of us started working from home in huge numbers. And not long after that, we saw a huge increase in attacks. Right around that same time, we saw a shift in the way compute worked. And if you look at the type of threats and the type of things that are happening, the insider risk and human error has always been there. And most breaches stem from, frankly, users making mistakes. And we can't talk people out of making mistakes. We can certainly put guardrails around that. I'll get into what that means. What that really means is that there's a problem that's happened, and it's really evident in the last couple of years, right around the same time that most applications moved to cloud. What we saw is a huge shift in browser usage. And if you think in terms of what we do every day, this morning I looked at our HR documents, which were all online. I went to my banking, all online. Even our company email, it's all Microsoft and it's all in the cloud. And what that means is I've now been exposed to all kinds of risk because the browser has essentially become the operating system for the way we do things. And identity theft, an identity attack, that's definitely become the prime reason why we see so much of this. And really, if you think in terms of the modern workday and what's happened, something like 85% of our day, of our browser usage, is at work. Because you think every application, whether it doesn't matter if it's, again, I mentioned Microsoft, could be ADP payroll, and it could be QuickBooks. doesn't make a difference. The point is, we're seeing a huge amount of compute all happening in the browser, and the browser really has evolved as the, for lack of a better term, operating system for our businesses, and as MSPs for our clients' businesses. What that means is that things have shifted quite a bit, and kind of goes back to this, right? So
one of the discussion that we've had a lot internally at Sherweb, I've had with Jason Brown, one of our vice presidents, is that on a long enough horizon, our prediction is that everything will become SaaS. Everything will become software as service, which means that everything will be accessed through the browser. Not today, not tomorrow. Like there's still a lot of business application, like vertical business application, but more and more like the scope of what gets turned into a software as a service is becoming like wider and wider, and fewer things are on the on-prem sort of spectrum. Like take a look at QuickBooks, which everybody thought would be the last thing to ever die on a small medium business sort of local install. While QuickBook Online, for all the flag that it takes, is becoming more and more common and everything. Like so, the statistics how they are now is one thing, but like looking to the future, what we have a very shared opinion as DefensX that more and more of your workloads and use cases are shifting to online, which means the browser as a vector, like as a channel that you're using to access them.
Couldn't agree more. And we're seeing this real time. That is the result of these attacks. Another stat here that makes sense to share is that something like 90% of all attacks are identity based, meaning that it has to do with somebody's identity being stolen, whether it be a password, login materials, everything else. And almost daily we're hit with things like, UPS would like to, has a package waiting for you, just click here and stuff like that. That's a really small example of what we see. More commonly, we're seeing false Microsoft logins and that kind of thing. And a lot of this shift happened a couple of years ago, and I'll give you a kind of quick background, and we'll get into this in a second about why DefensX. But if you think of the modern day workspace, you have this concept in cybersecurity called the kill chain, where you've got multiple steps in an attack, where it's reconnaissance, where there's the bad guys, and it's really automated. It's just AI doing this. It's not like some person sitting in a black hoodie someplace in a coffee shop in Eastern Europe, hacking. It really is an automated process that says, I know Guillaume, who knows Fred, who knows Sally, and now I can weaponize an attack. And they think it's somebody they know. And what they're doing is they're putting their passwords in place, and that's a weaponized attack. The delivery is that step 3. AI creates the links and mails that we see as an attack, and that's where we're seeing a lot of success. And that's very much where the browser lives, which is pre-attack. The vast majority of cybersecurity tools today at endpoint, you mentioned that earlier when you asked the question about why browser security and the changes in the shift and the need for this, and why is because the vast majority of security tools today, very important to have an EDR, very important to have some kind of protection for backups and that kind of thing. But frankly, the vast majority of security tools, especially EDRs, they're designed really for post-attack, meaning something bad has to happen at step 4 before they do their thing, which is look for signatures and try and figure out ways to keep somebody from getting widely affected and ultimately ransomed. Then, of course, the installation, and it's not really till step 6 when somebody's told, hey, we got one, we're in. And a lot of this came from several years ago where there was so much data being stolen in kind of, we'll call it 2019 roughly, that the hacker community figured out that, hey, I bet now that there's so much data being stolen and for sale to the point where stolen data was commoditized, I bet somebody would pay a lot more money to get their data back. And hence ransomware became more of an economy. The concepts were always there, but that's what we're seeing now. And the way they get in is through this mechanism, which is, let's send a phishing attack. It's a fake mail or it's a fake pop-up or whatever it happens to be. And a really small example of this is a very recent one that happened in the United States last year. United Healthcare, very famous, very large health insurer in the United States. They paid a ransom publicly of $22 million to get their data back and get things back up and running. But in the process, during that attack, they lost 190 million records that were compromised, which resulted in something like $3 billion in damages to the business. This entire thing stemmed from a phishing attack. And that's very much what happens to the browser. And what I'll talk to you about DefensX does is we think about those kinds of things. So with that, let's talk about why us. And what is DefensX? So DefensX essentially is, we are a very simple platform to deploy, and I'll talk about how that works in a second. We cover multiple parts of, to our business that I'll talk to you, and there's multiple SKUs involved. But fundamentally, we basically turn any browser into a secured environment and a secured work environment. Because what's happened is, to your point, Guillaume, you mentioned earlier, that the browser is becoming, really that prime conduit for the business. We're seeing this already. And things like credential theft and identity theft, and DNS security, those are foundations of what we do, and those are very simple cases. But things like data loss prevention, remote browser isolation, which I'll talk about in a second, and protecting things like our SaaS applications, because SaaS is definitely becoming more prevalent. And while we're at it, and since we've connected all of these tools, and we've made every browser, no matter what the browser is that the company launches, into a secured environment, well, we now have the capabilities to do things like replace a VPN down the road. And that it gives an organization a really strong capability to create a secured layer with any browser and have all of these tools in place and have some resilience and compliance at the same time. And as I mentioned earlier already, and you mentioned this yourself, applications are moving from on-prem into the cloud, and that's becoming a very real thing. Well, that's really what's behind what DefensX does. Is we recognize that we see this happening. This has been happening for a while. When we launched our company in 2020, we knew this was going to happen. That was the vision, and now we're seeing the manifestation of that. And what we're seeing in traditional tools, that they're just not keeping up, because they really are kind of right a boom or post attack, which again, very important. But the concept here is, let's do something that's pre-attack. This is left a boom, and the solution is simple. It is a very simple agent to deploy. It's with any PSA tool, your traditional ones like your ConnectWise or or the RMMs like Datto, people like that. Some well-known ones. Halo is another good example of one that we work with. The point is, easy for the MSP to deploy, and it really is built around the MSP. Simple agent that goes on machines, and then browser extensions are automatically deployed when that happens, which means whenever somebody launches a browser, we're just automatically in place. And we incorporate all the things in this stack here, from DNS protection, which is very simple, but much more importantly, credential theft prevention. We're visually looking at sites to see if they're fake, if they're pop-ups, and we're using AI to really manage human risk and keep people from making mistakes while protecting SaaS applications. And what that means is we built this complete stack where there's multiple SKU types that do different things, but can all work together and interoperate and be combined. In other words, different SKUs can be in the same tenant, which is kind of important, which means AI and phishing protection, which is kind of a big deal. Adware prevention, which means we can block ads. All that stuff intertwines and mixes with different SKUs that handle things like data loss prevention. Browser isolation, which I'll talk about in a second what that means. And then human risk management, where not only are we providing reports on who the risky people are in the organization, but we're doing something about it by forcing training. And we have multiple SKUs that do this. All of this works together, and there's a nice build, and I'll do a nice summary at the end of this. And the foundation of all of this is Core, which is our core package. Core includes, of course, traditional DNS, but DNS, again, is a pretty old idea, but still important. It's been around 15, 20 years. But on top of what used to be just important for DNS, we're thinking about the bigger thing. Like if somebody clicks on a site, well, then we make it impossible for them to put their password in that site that maybe they shouldn't be doing. Or maybe if it's a malicious site and it's a known thing, we see it. Or maybe if it's a site that's been around for 30 seconds because it's a 0-hour attack, which is very real, we spot that as well. The whole idea behind this is that we keep organizations safe by making sure that their workers don't make those mistakes you mentioned earlier. And while they're at it,
just a question for you, Andrew, like that comes from one of our partners, but basically, like, is it correct to say that like you do, like, often when we present new products that do things a little bit differently, let's start from there. Like, people question, like, is this just more money you have to spend on security? Like, where do you sort of what do you replace by making it better? Would it be wrong to think as DefensX sort of the base of it replaces your DNS filtering that you have, and then it does so much more? Like, is it a good place to put it mentally? Like, okay, I could get my same DNS filtering that I'm getting now, just as good, just as efficient, and then let's see what else sort of it provides me on top of that and allows me to go so much further in security.
Great question. Absolutely. We're actually able to find a savings here in the cost of a stack, because we're consolidating legacy point solutions with some new ideas, which is around what core is built around. So exactly right. What people used to spend on DNS, that can be assigned here and something that's competitive. And more specifically, think about things like password governance, right? Where if you think password governance, there's governance monitors and dark web monitors and that kind of thing. Well, that actually happens to be here for passwords. So the idea is that an organization, once they deploy this, immediately they'll know if their passwords are safe, if they've been compromised, which is kind of important, if they've been pawned on the dark web, and Justin can show us all that in our demo that we're going to do here shortly. And you're consolidating costs for really what are two kind of old legacy point solutions into something very modern that's dealing with the modern problem of a password getting stolen, identities getting stolen, and things like fake pop-ups from pretend, we'll call it mock Microsoft website logins, which tend to be the most common ones, and things just like it. We're able to spot that. So back to your question, yes, we are consolidating legacy point solutions, but we're bringing it in a much more modern package, and we're securing, and really we're doing it with any browser. So the organization that you deploy to, they don't really have to change any habits. The workers don't have to do anything. Things are up in seconds. They just keep doing their thing, but they do realize suddenly they can't click on certain websites if you don't want them to. And you can put some nice, healthy guardrails around a business and really ratchet it up to a true zero trust environment if necessary. And of course, you can make it as lax as you like, and you just pull data. But really what we're seeing now is a need to do this. And that example I used of United earlier is a really good example of just how far it can get from one small attack. I hope that answers your question.
Very much so. Thank you.
My pleasure. And taking one level up from there, from Core, there's Core Plus, which is the next SKU up. All the things I just talked about for data, for us not putting our passwords in the wrong places, and ad blocking, which I'll show you in a minute when we do our demo. But then add on top of that data loss prevention, or DLP. In other words, users can't just transfer data to a site they shouldn't be sending it to, like a Dropbox, or even worse, a fake Dropbox, or maybe a fake Microsoft site. The whole idea here is that data is now locked down and protected as well from cyber attack. But there's also internal risks. So think, a case of, say, a disgruntled employee who's decided to resign and has decided to take screenshots of the online QuickBooks you identified earlier. Well, we can actually have screenshot protection where they can't do that. So now you have internal data protection. Take it a little further, we have AI, which, in case anybody hasn't been paying attention, has become a kind of a hot topic. Well, AI also presents a whole ton of risk. Even though it's great to have tools like Copilot, we can actually make sure that the commercial data that an organization is using is not accidentally winding up in the open source Microsoft training model that everybody has access to. In other words, a company's private data is now safe from winding up in the public domain when they can still use AI comfortably. And that is a really big deal. Take it a little further, things like print protections where somebody just can't print screen. Now we have the ability to do all of this. And meanwhile, we're able to see, because we're able to look at things like extensions and what else is on the browser, we can also spot things like shadow IT in the back end. So the ability now is that an organization not only has a full control over where their data is going, where their passwords are going, ensuring that workers are not accidentally hit like by a drive-by, like a pop-up from adware, because we're blocking that too. But now you'll know if there's shadow IT happening at the same time. This really provides a nice 360-degree approach to really changing things a little bit and dealing with the modern problems that have resulted in the last couple of years of a tremendous amount of attacks. We take it a little further. And there's, even though you have an organization where you might have workers that, they've got rules in place, they can't go to certain sites, they can't do certain things, that's all great. But then there's always that boss that says, well, hey, I'm really smart. I'm smart enough to know that I shouldn't put my passwords in just any website I pop into, and I have to do these things, and I'm smarter than everybody else. So those rules don't apply to me. Well, that's usually where the problems start in most cases. For that, we have something called browser isolation, which means that user, let them go to the scary websites. But unbeknownst to them, what's really happening is when they click on something that's in our tables that's been deemed risky, it automatically sets up a remote browser session, which means it spins up in our cloud. All that user sees is a live stream of a website that we're running in our cloud, and they just see a completely air-gapped, safe version of that. In other words, they're just seeing a live stream. There's nothing ever touching their computer. They can do it in total safety. So that really puts a nice piece of insulation between that dangerous manager who thinks they're smarter than everybody else and the organization. But think in terms of like healthcare, legal firms, law enforcement. where in those cases where maybe they have to go and do research in places that aren't such great parts of the internet. Maybe they have to go to hate groups or terrorist groups or something awful like that to do caseworker research or whatever it happens to be. Well, now they can do it in total safety, completely air gap from the organization. And because we've now set up that remote browser session, we have the ability to do things like replace like the concepts like thin client, where now we can do complete remote sessions where everything is in total safety in our cloud and never touches an organization, and the organization's other assets are safe as well, and all communication happens in a zero trust environment, completely safe. And this really changes things with RBI, which is remote browser isolation. Now, the other things I talked about, those are also in what's called premium, which is this SKU. So there's core plus, and premium. And premium's big feature that you add on top of the others is RBI. And one more thing, you've also got a situation where there's always those workers that can, no matter what they're told, no matter what rules we have in place, maybe we are blocking them from going to bad sites, they're still clicking on them and still trying to do stuff. Well, we actually have something called autopilot, which is included in premium. So that's another feature inside premium. And what that is the ability now for an organization, without having to lift a finger or do anything, have individuals that are high risk to get tailored training to their specific habits. In other words, if I'm a worker and I've got bad passwords and they're low strength and it's like password 123 or something like that. Well, at some point I get a pop that tells me you're high risk. You have to take this test before you can continue. And now I'm forced now to watch a little video, and it's actually with USecure, which is actually another vendor here at Sherweb, and it's a little USecure video. You can add content on top of it. We provide a base level of videos. You're able to sell more to your customers, which is a really big opportunity to co-sell, to cross-sell. And as a worker now, I'm forced to take a test and do my thing before I'm able to go any further. What that actually does is helps that risk score, and we'll show you the risk score in our panels in a moment. It actually makes it a self-healing risk score, and we're using AI to do it. This really changes things a little bit because now resilience becomes a bigger thing. So to kind of recap quickly what the SKUs are, there's classic, which is just low DNS only. If what matters to you is 15 years ago, there's that. What we're really seeing is core plus, and premium, and core being really the baseline of all this, where secure DNS is there already. It's already included, no problem. But password protection, credential protection, company resilience reporting, it's all in there, as is adware protection and password governance. Core plus, take the same features from core and then add on top of that all the things I talked about in data loss prevention. Can't send files to the wrong places, can't screenshot, and I'm safe from AI taking my data and putting it in Microsoft training models. Same features of those two are also in premium, but on top of that is the remote browser isolation, where there is that air-gapped session in the cloud, and of course the training. So I hope that makes sense in what our SKU lineup looks like. What we see a lot of is really, in many cases, a lot of core plus, because the more modern needs in most businesses tend to be around things like data and AI. Those are really hot topics right now. And for an MSP, I mean, here's what it really means. It means you've now consolidated cost into, and reduced cost, and in some cases, 20 to 30% of what we're seeing in cost savings, because now you've taken point solutions like DNS, taken point solutions like password governance, and put it all into one place. And it fits very well in the modern stack. It fits very well alongside things like SentinelOne, existing security, and as you can see, that modern stack now has changed quite a bit. And in terms of where the market sits, there are other legacy point solutions like the DNS filters and Cisco umbrella, which we're seeing a lot of transition to core for. There are a couple of other folks in the secure browser space, but nobody else has a complete lineup like I just walked through. And because we are on any browser, it's very different than some of the kind of better known or more modern ones that do enterprise browser. And we're doing a lot of those functions as well, because we do all this on any browser. So with that, I want to make some key takeaways here, and I want to get right into our demo. It's clear I think it's clear here that the attack surface has certainly shifted. The browser is definitely becoming that operating system for the business. As MSPs, for all of us, I mean, this is a very relevant category, and this gives you a lot to talk about. And really, if nothing, you can do some stack consolidation, if not upsell to some new things like browser isolation and some other stuff I talked about. And really, the opportunity now is to shift all of your compute into this 360-degree approach, where you're able to now really lock things down for your clients. And I think there's a lot here, and there should be a lot of value for. And once you get to the demo, We'll be very happy to take some questions around some of this, but you'll see a lot of what we do now. So with that, I'll hand that to my colleague.
Yeah, speaking of the demo, time for that. Already some questions in the question tool around the capacity, and I think actually I see that Justin's already answered the specific customer, but I think the demo will also serve the purpose to show. I like the practicality of demos, so that's cool. Let's get to that. Justin, are you with us?
Yep, just making sure I share the right screen.
That's always a good idea.
Sure.
You can see your screen now. You can see the Dropbox website.
Yes. So the first thing I'm going to show off for you guys is our credential protection. So we all know and love Dropbox. And as you can see here, I have a password manager as well. So I'm going to try to log into Dropbox. So I'm going to go to log in. Autofill is happening. And there you go. DefensX just blocked my ability to input a password into Dropbox in this case. So we do have that ability. It does not matter the website. We can easily block their ability to input passwords. You can go quite a few routes with this. You can either go the true zero trust route, which means if that website's not on a particular list, you can't put your password in. You'll get the ability to request access, and then the MSP can make sure that the website's safe and then add it to the list. Or we can give our users a little bit of freedom underneath some very specific conditions. And that's what you guys see here. We're kind of alerting the user, hey, it's the first time you're putting your credentials in here. We assign the website a risk score. So we assign risk scoring to the websites. We're looking at two primary things. Is the website safe to visit? And is the content safe to view? That'll get you your risk score. And then we also show exactly who exactly is trying to get your credentials. Now, since Dropbox is low risk, it is a safe and legitimate website. I get this button here. We call this granting consent. If I hit the button, I'm able to put my password in. My autofill happens. Everything works. That consent is also logged for me as a user. I don't get that pop-up again for Dropbox in this case. And it's also logged inside of our system so you can see who exactly is granting consent to which websites. The beautiful thing here is if the website was any other risk score, a medium risk or a high risk, the button to grant consent goes away. We can ensure the users only grant consent to low risk, safe places. Now, the other half of this equation when it comes to credential protection is we also have protections against multi-factor authentication token theft. Here is a good video of it. So here's the classic scenario. It looks like Microsoft, but it's definitely not an Office 365 domain. The user doesn't know any better, so they're going to go ahead and click. But DefensX, we do know. So DefensX can see that this website is trying to impersonate Microsoft, and so we shut down the credential field. The user cannot put their credentials in no matter what. And we actually alert the user saying, so this website's trying to impersonate Microsoft. The idea here is that you can't steal the token because the token never got generated because you never put your password in. That's how we have this style of protections. And we've actually adapted this to be a little bit more better. We're using a technology called fisheye. We're no longer just checking the domain. We still do that. We're now looking at the whole picture as a separate piece of art. Is the logo in the right place? Is the logo coloring right? Is the sign-in button where it should be? That way, if we see anything out of order, even by a few pixels, fisheye detects it and then locks down that website as well to make sure that they're not getting phished and have their credentials harvested and things like this.
As I mentioned, the fake Microsoft account attacks now account for something like 90% of what reported attacks.
Yep, exactly. That's why this technology is here. It's to help prevent against the latest and greatest style of attacks. And by the way, this video that I'm currently using right here is on our YouTube channel for DefensX. We actually show the whole process of stealing said tokens through a program called EvilGenix. So we actually show the whole process. I just showed you guys the last little bit right here. So now on top of the other abilities we have, on top of credentials, we do have the ability to do some DLP features. So here I put forward into some of our DLP features here. And if you can kind of see it, there's my lovely watermark right there. And no, it's not part of the website. It's part of the whole UI. See, it just bounced. See, right there. Every user gets a specific code that you can trace back to that person. So the traditional way of using a watermark is that making sure they don't take a picture and upload it somewhere. I can trace that code back to a person. Another great way about this is since you can watermark any website you want, is we're seeing a lot of partners, they're putting all the normal websites that a user might use throughout their daily usage into a special list, and they're watermarking the list. So now they're saying, if you see your watermark, you're in a safe place. If you don't see your watermark, you're not in a safe place, back out of there. So now they're also using the watermark as a way to show that this is a trusted website and things like this. And then we do also offer printing protection. So I'm going to try to print from Ford in this case here. And you're going to see right here, printing's disabled by your company policy. Even save to PDF and print to PDF does not work. We prevent all style of printing from this particular website. So this way they can't take any screenshots or anything like that at all, bring it down to a PDF. We do protect those from those style of breaches and things like this. And then of course, here's one of our best features. This is our remote browser isolation. So I put Toyota, in this case, into remote browser isolation. And as you guys can see from an end user aspect, nothing's changed. Videos will still play. I have the ability to click. It's just as fast as normal browsing, like so. But as you guys might have noticed, website's a little different up here. So this is how we can tell we're using remote browser isolation. So that's what we did. We took Toyota, in this case, we put it on a browser in the cloud, and we're streaming the content, in this case, to myself. So I am officially 100% air-gapped from Toyota. Nothing at Toyota's website is touching my machine whatsoever. No scripts, no trackers, no drive-by downloads. Even in the Elements page, you can see nothing at Toyota. This is all DefensX. DefensX is able to mimic where my mouse goes, and it's able to mimic my clicks. And we also still protect from downloading and things like this. I can come in here to, like, say, the owners. I can't right-click. I can't download this as a picture because we don't allow it. That's how we still protect the user from this style of website. So it gives them the ability to view, but that's just it. So one, really great tool for MSPs. We all get that lovely support ticket in. Hey, can you check this website? Hey, I want to access this website. How do you do your due diligence safely? Well, you now have a way. Or maybe your customer needs to go to bad websites for legitimate reasons. Maybe they work in law enforcement or an advocacy group. Well, you can set up in the policy to where as soon as someone goes to a high-risk website, we automatically kick in our remote browser isolation. The user doesn't even need to contact me to set this up. We do it automatically. They do their job. They go about their day. No one's the wiser, and things like that. So we have those kind of capabilities in here. So now I'm going to kind of go into a little bit of the back end here to see how easy this is to configure. So here I am inside of DefensX. I'm going to go into an actual customer here. We're very easy to deploy. We actually give you guys the RMM script to deploy, so we're very easy to deploy. Things like that. We have we're already inside of some marketplaces like ConnectWise and Datto, things like that. Policy configuration is pretty straightforward. We have every ability built into their own separate little tabs up here. So you can see right there, there's my printing protection, my watermarking protection. This is your standard content filtering. This is what you would see in, like, say, a DNS filter. We do the same thing, except we have that isolation features and those read-only features, things like that. We have our ability to come in here to do our credential filtering. We also have a warn option as well. We can also block upload and download, as Andrew has mentioned. What's really kind of nice about our file filter protection is we can block just uploading or just downloading. You can restrict one particular way of traffic. We actually have a partner who does this with one of their customers. They're a healthcare agency. All of the customers' private insurance files are all in the cloud. So for specifically the nurses, they gave the users the ability to visit the website. They gave them permission to put their passwords in, but they only give them permissions to upload the records. They don't have permission to download the records. That's reserved for the records technicians and the medical doctors and things like that. So you'll have that capability. You'll have that granularity. And then, of course, we have an ad blocker as well. No one likes ads. So we do our ad blocking a little bit differently, so we're able to make it a little bit easier so that websites can't track that you're using this as an ad blocker. So here is an example of that. Good old ESPN. We probably all know about it. And you can see right here, all that beautiful blank white space, not a single ad in sight. So we have the ability to break these. Now, how we kind of work this is the website gives us the traffic. We see that traffic. We just don't let that traffic finish to the browser. We just stop it at the agent level. That way, the website thinks it's getting the ads, but you're not really as well.
Websites don't get broken this way.
Exactly. As you can see here, everything forms in just nicely versus no banners and things like that.
A very convenient byproduct of this is you're now improving browser performance up to about 30%.
Exactly. So now, Andrew kind of mentioned, artificial intelligence is the new latest and greatest in things. We do have artificial AI protections for Copilot. This is really kind of cool. With a simple flip of a toggle here, I am now requiring all of my users, if they want to use any version of Copilot, it does not matter. They have to log in with their Entra ID to utilize it, and then we enforce the commercial data protections on the user, meaning all the stuff that they're typing in, we ensure none of it's saved, we ensure Microsoft has no eyes to the data, and they cannot use the data to train the AI model. Super important because Microsoft gave everyone Copilot back in February. A lot of people don't realize Copilot's turned on by default. It ingests your data on your computer because it wants to be readily help you, just like Clippy back in the day, which that could lead to some possible security and privacy breaches. With us, we make sure that that data does not get into the general AI model, which then becomes public knowledge and things like that. So now going into our reporting, we do have very, very good reporting here. The big one here is going to be the cyber resiliency scoring. I like to call it the credit score for your browsing habits. So we're looking at 4 major numbers here. And I'm going to go back to like about February-ish. So password hygiene, we're looking at the encrypted hash of the password. We do run it through the k-anonymity algorithm. We will show you if a password has been breached and how many times. For malware safety, we're looking at what you're downloading and from where. Are you going from the normal safe places, or are you just clicking the first link in a Google search? Social engineering, yep, what social media websites you're going to, how long you're staying there, and things like that. And everyone gets a score. Every user, I can come in here and click on this one user. This person's password score is pretty good. They got a couple of medium strength passwords, nothing to worry about. The big thing I care about is not a single thing is pawned. So malware safety, we're coming in here, nice and high safety places. Social engineering, you're going to see, yep, I like to visit the Twitters, the Reddits, like everybody else does, and things like this. So what we have here is tangible data about a user's habits. You can take this data, you can go to your customer and go, here's the habits of your users. These habits are risky. Here's what we're going to do to make sure you're still compliant and manage that risk. An easy way to go about this is, as Andrew kind of mentioned, security awareness training. Does this person need a password training? No. Score's really good. Do they need a social engineering training? Yes. Even though they might go to these places for their job, it's risky to do so because that's where people get targeted. So, of course, I'm going to give this person some training so that they know what to look for in case they do get targeted. Now, my other guy, his score isn't exactly the greatest in the passwords. He's got medium strength. He's got a weak password. He has a breached password right there. There's my fake Dropbox account. So this person's going to get the password training on top of the social engineering training as well. And as we mentioned, we have Copilot now, which is you're able to utilize uSecure. We have an autopilot feature here. You can actually use that score to determine who gets the training and things. So here we can use that score as a self-improving, self-healing score and things like that.
An important note too for the training for everyone here, because I know uSecure is another vendor you have at Sherweb. We provide a base level of videos. Okay, they're the open source videos that they offer. You have the ability to ingest more content into this, and you can sell more videos that are more comprehensive and really have some fun with this, depending on the type of environment you're involved in. So there's an opportunity to sell additional content to your clients with this feature. It actually becomes a really nice interactive way to promote more of that product as well.
Yep, exactly. Now, one of the other great things about our training is you have the ability, and you get the ability to give the user the ability to postpone the training a certain number of times. You get to choose how many times they get to postpone. You get to choose how long that postponement is. And the really cool thing here is once they use all of their postponements, they have to take the training. We kind of lock down the browser. They have to take the training, then we give it back. Our training is not that long. It's a whopping 5 minutes to include the questions. It's not like we're going to take away their hour of their time, but they do have those abilities. You can utilize this system, which is really kind of nice. So with autopilot, you can kind of start this training up to be based upon the user's habits, which is a great way to show off, their weaknesses. I have great passwords. I won't never get the password training, but I'll get the training about social engineering and things like this. You'll have that capability. And of course, this report is easily scheduled. You can send this out to anybody you want to on, like, say, a biweekly or a monthly basis, or you can instantly generate a report. We call it the CISO report. We talk about our math. We show the users and their scores. We even show you possible risky browser extensions that are installed on the devices. We have recommendations on how to up those scores. And then we got the classics, what's been allowed the most, what's been blocked the most, things of that nature in there. So this way you have a nice and easy report to give to your customers about the habits of their users, which is really important in today's world. Not a lot of many executives know what Joe and the marketing team is really going and things like this. With us, they get kind of an idea and things like that. So, all right. I think that's just about it. Anything else you wanted to show off?
Sorry. That's one of the big part around tooling that we talked about internally is that visibility that it gives the MSP towards the end customer. Too often, like the MSPs that work really, really well and do a really good job are sort of punished by the fact that they're not super visible to their clients. And the clients go like, why am I paying all that money? Well, you're paying all that money so there is no problem and you don't see me. But reports like that are a good way to show that like we're on top of it. The reason that you're not getting bothered is because we're on top of it. And it's good thing to tie to good service.
Exactly. With our reports, they're nice and robust. We do have individual logs as well. I can type in a specific user if I needed to, and then the report shows trends and things like this. So we have a lot of great ways, a lot of good logging in here, so that you can easily, get the data that somebody wants. So, all right. Anything else you want to show off there, Andrew? Or
I think that's a great overview. That's a lot. Guillaume, please.
all right.
So if you don't mind sharing, the presentation again, I'll do it.
Certainly. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So we're almost up at time, but I want to take just a minute to go through a few details of how you sort of can acquire DefensX now at Sherweb. So if you don't mind moving forward to the next slide. So we have launched DefensX now at Sherweb. It is available today. You don't have to wait. It is already out there in our marketplace. It is available through our vendor management section that you're probably familiar with now, as this is where we've put all of our recent new products. You can activate it for your account as a partner, and then you can just use it, and it will sync back to our platform for billing. So it will show up in our new consumption tab. So these are all new things. As we're adding a bunch of products, we're also making it easier to deal with those products. So the consumption tab in Cumulus is now present and all those things. We have competitive pricing. I don't want to, as Andrew explained, there's a number of different SKUs with different level of features. For all those SKUs, we have a good price and things for you. And then obviously the high quality of support and onboarding that we always have with our products. We do it ourselves, and then if we see the need, we bring in DefensX or willing participant, and always looking forward to working with our partners. Moving forward on how to get started. One more. So there is free trial available in the NFR. You can have a total of 25 seats of either of the products. You can also have a 14 days trial. Sorry, just a weird pop-up. So for your organization within the DefensX portal, you could choose a 14-day trial. So you have the ability to try this product without committing to it. The reason that those things are available is everybody, including DefensX, is very comfortable that once you try it, you will love it. Certainly a good way to get started as a MSP is to do it for your own organization, see how it works for your own constraints and restriction, and like, is it a plus or is it a burden? Like, does it fit well with how you see sort of reality of working day to day in the browser? I talked already about the new activation process. Check it out. It's meant to be much simpler. I don't think I need to talk about it very much.
Yeah. If you don't mind, just one quick point about NFRs and trials. NFRs are for our partners to use. If you're our partner, we love it if you're using it yourself internally. And those 14-day trials, that can be for your clients. If you want to test it in your client site, you have 14 days to do that. So a bit of both. We definitely want you to keep the NFRs up for yourselves to use. We just find it just makes a nice community that way. Sorry.
Yeah, 100%. And then you're right. Maybe it wasn't clear enough. Like, as you create new organizations for your clients, you have the ability to make them a free 14-day trial. And that's a good way to get started. Maybe you can demonstrate the value to them before they commit. Honestly, I think once you've adopted DefensX to your stack, you probably won't be doing free trial for all organization, but you have the freedom to do it, like that. You have the flexibility to do it. So while we end this here, we had a few questions. Let me see if there's some. I know we've answered a few during the presentation. I think they're all answered now. Yeah. Anything I want to bring up for everybody?
I think I did see one, if it's okay. There was one question about PSA is a PSA required? Well, the answer is it's an option, but it's not required. It just makes it very convenient to use a PSA. If that's helpful.
Yes. I think another one that was interesting is I think some of your competitors, they use specific browser software to be able to do similar things that you do around browser security. Remote browser protection, or remote browser integration rather, is not dictated by a specific browser. You can use whatever browser. Like that was one of the questions. I think it's important to answer to communicate.
That's right.
Um,
We're not and that's a really good point. Yeah, that's just it. One of the big reasons why so many organizations are moving to us, we're now like, I think something like 3,500, and organizations are now using DefensX and counting. It's impressive how quickly we're growing. I think part of it is our flexibility, because it's not a proprietary browser. There are a couple of solutions out there. We're not the only one in the secure browser category, although there aren't that many players doing this. But what does differentiate us is not proprietary, can be any browser. We run the table between, doing a full enterprise extension where the browser really can help replace things like a thin client or a VPN. That's absolutely there, but it's on any browser, and we're the only ones doing that specifically. That's a great question about that. I saw that earlier. Is there a question about RBI on a commercial browser? Well, sure, any browser, pick one. It can be Firefox, can be Edge, Chrome. That does not matter.
Yeah, and I think that's as you pointed out, that's an important differentiator and a big selling point. Okay, so as you can see on screen, some of the contacts, if you want to reach out to us, if you have an account manager, like a dedicated account manager, you can reach out to them and talk to them about DefensX. If you want a demo, if you want to get started, some onboarding, like all those things are available to you. If you don't have a dedicated account manager, you can contact our partner team. They'll be there to help you. You have access to the exact same things, so don't hesitate. If you have any questions for us, if you want to contact the DefensX team, we can put you in touch. Like, everybody's here to help you out. So I want to thank everybody for being here. The DefensX team, Andrew, Justin, thank you for the demo. And then specifically our partners, thank you for taking the time and spending part of your afternoon with us. So thank you very much, and we'll see you around.
Thank you.